So my talk is titled From Pain to Product in 3 Weeks. Because if you follow me on Twitter or get my emails, you probably are aware that my husband Thomas and I are launching a new software as a service. And it's called Sweep. And the very first commit to the code base was exactly 3 weeks ago. That worked out very nice on July 11th. Today is, of course, August 1st. This is what Sweep looks like currently. It is a board to help you manage your chronologically recurring tasks and to share them with your team or your collaborators. So this is actually the board I am using to manage my low-key soft launch for Sweep itself, which I think is just delightfully meta. But I wanted to talk, and you wanted to hear more about like the way that you develop and launch a software as a service in general, and especially rapidly. Because as I said, it's been 3 weeks, and this is my third software as a service, and probably I think something like my 11th product if you count the various complete redos of 30 by 500. And I have a lot to teach you, as well as being someone who teaches other people how to do what I'm doing. So I've got a grab bag of information about launching a software as a service, audience, customer pain, development, design, and marketing and launch. And strap in, it's going to have a lot of details. This is not like a perfectly scripted talk. I'm just kind of going to free associate based on my slides because there's a lot in my head. And I figured you guys are dedicated. Your nerdy types are here. I'm going to just give it all to you. So I've been running a product business since, oh my God, almost 9 years, which is crazy. This is Freckle Time Tracking, which is the first app that we launched, my husband and I, in December of 2008 is when we launched it. And we did our first billing in January of 2009. And it was for $1,400 and something dollars. So it was a very small launch in the scheme of things, but we launched over $1,000 a month in revenue, which was super exciting. But the first year, it did only $27,000 total. So we weren't exactly quitting our day jobs, which were consulting. And the interior of Freckle now looks like this. This is our very first sales page. It had good copywriting, but everything else about it was terrible, which is why I put it here as an example of Amy's design circa 2008. Today, Freckle is a much sleeker and much more featureful and much more powerful application. And we're doing high 6 figures a year. I actually don't know what it is off the top of my head. Probably around $600-something thousand a year plus prepayments. So by most definitions, a very good app, and it's been a really great experience overall. However, the reason I don't know the revenue off the top of my head is because I'm just not super into Freckle anymore, and that is because I learned a very hard lesson, which is pick your audience carefully. Now, audience questions are probably the number one question we get from people about how to start a business. People say, I don't have any ideas. Or like, how should I pick my niche? Or I made something and no one's buying it. How do I reach out to my audience? Oh God, did I pick the wrong audience? I think I picked the wrong audience. Help, help, help. When you start a business, it is unfortunate that the very first decision you make is literally the most important and the hardest. And that is, who will your product serve? And I'm going to just dial back that sentence. I'm going to walk it back because I said, who will your product serve? And that implies that you already have a product. And that's the way, the sort of natural way to develop a product comes out. You're like, I'm going to make something now. Who do I sell it to? That is the root of the idea of product market fit. And who does this product help is like a question that I've heard a lot in the product development circles. Like, how do I figure out who will use this best? And that's backwards. Picking your audience is the most important thing you do, and you should do it before you come up with any products. If you already have a product and you're like, oh God, I picked the wrong audience, it may be salvageable. So don't freak out. But when I came up with the idea for Freckle and we developed it, I was doing consulting along with my husband Thomas. We did consulting separately and also together. And almost all of our friends and our associates in the like Ruby, JavaScript, and design communities were all doing consulting at that time. And so for me, it was really natural to say, well, I have this real problem with time tracking, and I'm going to fix it for me and people like me. And that is what we teach in 30 by 500. We teach you to serve people in an audience that you already are in. However, I'm no longer a consultant. I do still track my time, but a lot of the needs of my customers no longer have anything to do with needs that I have. And I want them to be happy, and I design things for them. But it's a lot more work to sell Freckle now, because the people who are subscribed to my newsletter and people who come to my webinars like you guys, and the people who enroll in my class 30 by 500 are not the audience for Freckle. It's not an agnostic tool. It was designed for people who run like creative agencies. And so for me to go and market Freckle and market 30 by 500, for example, is double the work, because they don't, and I hate to say this word, they don't synergize at all. I can't leverage any synergistic something. My husband's groaning on the other desk. I don't know if you could hear that. I can't make 1 hour of work do double duty, which is what I love to do. So the lesson that I learned with Freckle is to pick an audience that not only that you already are in, but one that you will remain in. I was literally using Freckle to get out of the audience for Freckle, which in retrospect, not the most exciting thing in the world. not the best idea I've ever had. But now with Sweep, I am aiming the product at an audience I'm in and will not leave. And more importantly, being in that audience and already serving them has given me the path forward to create Sweep. Sidebar, Nathan Barry is not one of my students. He's never attended any 30 by 500 type stuff. He is a friend. And so just don't think I'm taking credit for what he's achieved in any way. However, many years ago, Nathan Barry launched ConvertKit, just in case you don't know. That's what the logo's there. Many years ago, I read an article from Nathan about his $5,000 app challenge. I was already aware of Nathan's info products about app design and thought, he was somebody to watch. He was doing a great job, really helping people and doing good money with it. And like everything he made was like really super awesome. And then he wrote about his $5,000 app challenge. And he wrote that he was looking for a niche. And he wrote that he was looking for maybe like looking into maybe like lawyers and real estate agents and landscapers and insurance agent, construction companies, or pretty much anyone else. And I wrote to him and I was like, don't do that. I had some really important advice. Do you want my advice? Because believe it or not, I do ask people before I go off and tell them that everything they're doing is wrong. And I had a conversation with Nathan that he very graciously allowed me to post on my blog. So this conversation about Nathan's $5,000 app challenge is on my blog right now, and it is so old. And ConvertKit is like a multi-million-dollar a year business now. So I told him, Nathan, do not try to serve lawyers, real estate agents, landscapers, insurance agent, construction companies, or quote anyone else. That's common advice for when you niche down or whatever. The problem is that you are an outsider. You don't know what those people do, what they pay for. You have to learn everything that they already use. You have literally no in with them, and you have no idea if they behave like businesses that they buy on value. And so I was like, don't do that. Serve people who are in your audience, whose audiences you want to be in, who you're going to have this intimate connection with and an understanding with, that's going to save you so much work. And obviously he listened to me and possibly other people who were telling the same thing, came up with ConvertKit. And I know that there have been ups and downs, and he wrote about how he was told to either grow ConvertKit, focus on it exclusively, or shut it down by Heat and Sean. That's great advice. And once he really put his nose to the grindstone and applied himself, I mean, it's a big business now. So this advice goes for everyone. not just me and not just you. This advice on audience is crucial and it works. So my second software as a service, which you may have never heard of, was Charm. Freckle was only ever meant to be a stepping stone for me. I had bigger ambitions. I wanted to create tools that really change the way people work. This has always been really important to me as a designer and someone who really cares about user experience. I wanted to fix email, which is insane. I admit that. You're like, I'm going to fix this thing that literally every person in the developed world uses every single day. It's super egotistical. And also probably impossible unless you're already like the scope of Google. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to solve one particular use of email, which is customer support. And I'm going to solve it specifically for people who run software as a service businesses, product businesses like mine. And I made a big mistake with Charm. It was an amazing application and it grew really well before we even launched it publicly. I focused ruthlessly on the user experience and the way that support really works and how to use support to give insight to the product team and the development team and the sales team. And people loved it. It was doing like 50 grand a year already, even before we had launched it, because we never launched it. We actually shut Charm down before we publicly launched it. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, business-wise or like work-wise. And shutting it down was not a mistake. It was absolutely the right thing to do, but I still wish we hadn't had to do it. That's the only thing I've done in my life that I'm like, damn, I wish I could have done that differently. And that's saying something because back in 2006, Toby Luca offered me 5% stake in what would have become Shopify. So that's like a bazillion-dollar mistake, but I don't feel about it the way I feel about Charm because Charm was my baby and it worked so well and the people who used it loved it. So why did we shut it down? Lifestyle issues. So before I set out to create Charm, and we spent a long time on the development process, which was mistake number one. We should have done much more bare bones, like I'm going to talk about in this entire talk. That's like the focus of this. And we should have shipped it sooner, and we should have figured out a better way to manage that. But what we did instead was try to create an app that worked really, 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 really well before we launched it. And then we got to having spent like almost 2 years developing it. I know, idiot. And realized we didn't actually have the capacity to run an application that people would be relying on to do their work and they would be living in it, 8 hours a day for large teams, and just like dealing with email is actually extremely difficult technically. And we used some bleeding edge technology at the time. We had the interface developed in Backbone and we were using Rails 3, which at the time was quite new. And we had these performance issues that no one, including the Rails core team, could figure out. And we had issues with the app actually panicking Ubuntu, the Ubuntu kernel of our servers, and like no one could figure it out, including the Rails core team. So like we had these connections and we couldn't figure out the problems. And we had tried to hire, we tried to become get technical partners and share revenue, and like none of these approaches worked. I wrote a long post about this, but what we realized at the end, what finally made us decide to actually shut Charm down instead of launch it, was we have friends who run infrastructure products. The company is Wildbit. They run Beanstalk, Hostmark, and they had a whole lot more money than us. Their products were very successful, and they had a large staff compared to us. And they still, at that time, back in 2011, 2012, had to like leave our parties when they came over to hang out because they had server issues and they had to go fix it. So that, to me, I stared that down and I thought, what am I doing? I don't want to live like that. Thomas doesn't want to live like that. We were on vacation and the servers went down at 3 a.m. and it was a problem. And I was like, I can't do this. We've tried to hire, we've tried to partner, and it's not working. I love the app, but I don't want to hate my life forever. So consider your lifestyle before you sit down to create an application. Also, don't wait 2 years to launch it, or it'll hurt even worse. So with our new apps, Are people going to be using them heavily throughout the day? Probably. But will they be in them literally every second of every day? No. Is the app itself their work? No. If it goes down for a few minutes or an hour, it's not going to kill anyone. People aren't going to lose money, and we don't have that level of responsibility. Also, Sweep is a much simpler application. It'll be easier to keep running. It doesn't have to fetch email. It doesn't have to have that kind of thing going on. It's much, 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 much simpler. And we are, of course, launching the like actual paid version 1 in about a week. And the alpha early access is already online. So I'm never making that mistake again. So when you set out to create your application, consider your lifestyle, consider if you're going to be able to hire to run it. Consider how you're going to feel if it goes down. Like, are you going to feel like the worst person in the world because people are literally losing money? I don't recommend that until you already have a team and have bankrolled your business with cash. So things to consider, lifestyle. My third example is actually not a software as a service, but an actual downloadable Mac app. What were we thinking? I don't know how long you've been following me or if you've ever seen twiststory.com, but many, many, many years ago, Thomas and I put together this fun, like, sort of digital experience that just pulled tweets that had the phrase, I hate, I think, I wish, I believe, and I feel in them. And then we post-process them and anonymize them and create this cool, like, flowing stream of humanity. It blew up like you wouldn't believe. It's actually in a museum exhibit right now, which is crazy. It's been published in books. The like head of marketing at Microsoft used it behind Ray, what's his face, used it behind him. Ray Ossie used it behind him during a shareholders meeting. People have used it behind their bands at music shows and stuff. Like, we got all this press, we get all this consulting gigs from it. It was extremely popular, and it's actually still really popular, which is weird because we haven't touched it. So what we heard a lot when we published this, people reached out to us and said, can I copy your code? And we'd say, no, it's not open source. And then marketing people in marketing agencies and so on who run events and these things, and I want a twist story that has my keywords. And a few of these people we converted to consulting clients. Like, we did one for the tennis channel, of all things. It led us to lots of consulting work. But people kept saying, I really want to have this on my computer so I can display it whenever and change my words anytime I want for presentations or like backdrops for things, etc. Or like just to run in the office to like keep our finger on the pulse of our customers and things like that. People would say that, and they would be people in businesses, and they would be like really enthusiastic. And so we made an app for them. We worked with our friend Dave Martirana, and we produced a Mac app that would let you recreate Twist Story, theme it, set your own words, set your own rules, and it was like $29, I think. Like, not a lot for these people who had a very clear business case and came to us and said, I want it, I'd buy it. You know what I learned from this? People lie. They lie so hard. Virtually no one bought it, including the people who wrote to us and said that they wanted it. And that's the real thing. And that's why I didn't spend a lot of time trying to like relaunch it or find product market fit, because literally the people who said to us, I will buy this, would not buy it for $29. And we were both like, screw it. Take our lumps. We launched a flap, made a critical mistake. We asked people, we listened to them when they came to us and said they would do X. People do not tell the truth when they say, I will buy X. And that is a fact. And that is why I'm really anti-customer interviews, because these people are actually choosing on their own volition to come to us and like begging us to do something, and they still didn't act. When you go to a customer interview, the person is going to lie to you. It doesn't matter. They're not going to do it intentionally, almost certainly, but they're going to feel really optimistic about their future behavior, and they're going to present you something that sounds appealing to you, because most humans are pro-social by nature, right? We want to please the person who across from us. And so we sort of imagine the best world where that what they want and what we claim to want coincide. And we say, yeah, I'll do that. And then we don't. So that's why in 30 by 500 and in the rest of my business decisions, I have never listened to what people said that they will do. I have literally only looked at what people actually do. Because those people, I'm certain, didn't pay for any other social media streaming visual display software, probably because it didn't exist at that time. We were the first. And you don't want to be the first. You want to go serve an audience that already pays for things that are like what you want to sell them. Do not track them down, cold email, cold call. Do not go have interviews with people and take what they say at face value. The difference here, though, is if people are already using your product and they have things to say, that is much more believable. You still have to like investigate it, but they're already showing what their actions that they're using your software or reading your book or whatever, and that sort of pre-qualifies them. But people lie, bottom line. Don't ask them what they do, will do. Don't listen to what they'll do. Look at what they actually do. And as I said, that is the root of Sales Safari. If you are just tuning into my whole 30 by 500 universe, Sales Safari is a research method that I invented because I am a giant nerd, whereby you go out onto the internet and observe people's behavior in forums, mailing lists, Twitter, what software they buy or what books they read or what they recommend, what words they use, and what they actually do, including like complaining or seeking help. What do they seek help for? What do they do with the advice? You know, like what are complaints about the help that they get, etc. Obviously, if you really want to learn Sales Safari, the best way is to take my class 30 by 500, but this isn't a sales pitch. So I'm going to demonstrate it to you instead. So my audience for everything pretty much going forward, entrepreneurs like me, primarily designers, developers, writers, the people in the creative professions who know how to make things and get paid to make things for other people, but really want to make things and sell them directly to their customers for the satisfaction of it, for the ability to create the freedom and the life that they want. And even those people who are already doing that. So probably just people like you, people like my students, people like my friends, people like my business associates, you know, in my communities that I'm in already. And we all have things that we need and want. So the goals that we all share at a basic level, like we want to keep the business running or we want to get it off the ground. We want to do things that actually work, rather than wasting our time on stuff that doesn't work or procrastination. We want to make progress every day. It's really important for people to make progress. And I'll kind of demonstrate to you how I got that point from Safari, but also just psychology. Like people need to feel like what they're doing is moving forward. We want to feel the satisfaction of completing things. Again, it's a behavior and it's like a psychological fact at the same time. And also a lot of us as we're growing, we need to be able to document tasks that we, the solo founder, do that then we need to like get our team on board to do it as well. So these are all goals that we have, whether or not we can sit down and lay them out like this in a bullet list. That's my job. My job is to look at what people do and say and don't do and don't say and come up with something like this that helps me get to the heart of what people need. And I do that. This slide, I think, is in the wrong place. Oh, so yeah. And if you nail this stuff, you can do things like get a 30% conversion rate from your traffic to your squeeze page so that people sign up to be notified for your new app. So when I made this slide, it was 304 people from 1,000 visitors who signed up to hear about Sweep. I don't know if you saw the landing page. It is the lamest, literally the lamest. Now there's like 500 from slightly more traffic. So if you nail that, if you nail the pain that they're in and what they need and want, their dream in 30 by 500 speak, you will be able to compel people to act because they'll be like, yes, that is my problem. And I do want that to go away. And that's exactly how I would like it to go away. Fantastic. We are in agreement. Pain is obviously an English word, but also the term in 30 by 500 for the, well, I'm just going to demonstrate too, but it is the value the epic value that is hidden in conversations and behaviors and statistics on articles all around you in your audience. So here's how I have sales safaried in a way that directed me towards sweep. Something that I hear people tell me all the time, or they just sort of say it into the ether, they tweet it, it's a conversation in forums and mailing lists and chat rooms, is the idea that I wish I could hire a boss to tell me what to do. I hear this from freelancers, consultants, and also, of course, business people. I also hear that people are overwhelmed by the decision of what to do next. There's so many things, so many choices. Any one of them could be the right one. And so they don't know how to decide. And so they end up reading Hacker News instead, or, you know, entrepreneur forums or Quora or newsletters or whatever. People procrastinate with their behaviors, and there's a reason for that. And one of the reasons that I hear over and over is like, I don't know what to do, so I do nothing. Literally nothing. I also hear a lot from my students and from other people in entrepreneur communities who are actively building their businesses that they do things regularly, which is good. It's important. But they don't really feel like they're getting anywhere, because especially when you're working on new stuff, the point at which it becomes a real thing where you really see things coming together is further along. When you're doing research and you're gathering your research, you can see your research coming together, but like you don't necessarily sense the progress. And people also lose track of where they are in the like product development process. The issue with developing a side project, if you aren't really used to it, is that there doesn't feel like there's a roadmap, and there's no one like at your workplace going, yeah, thanks for that deliverable you gave me, because it's not a workplace thing. You're doing it on your own. Even if you have a paper roadmap that says these are the steps, you can sort of forget about it and get lost and forget where you were. So I've gathered lots of information about what people say and do and think, and the patterns that I've seen in them, and what they read and what they share and what they fail at. I feel like the core pain, which is the underlying pain of most of these, is that people feel anxious or lost or inefficient because they don't know what they should be doing, have been doing, or will be doing. Which, when you think about it, in this day and age in 2017, that people worry about what they should be doing, or that they can't quite get a capture, like if they can't wrap their hands around what they have been doing and have achieved already, is kind of crazy to me. This leads to a lot of behaviors that I have seen in the real world. So obviously everyone who's into productivity software has heard of Kanban, and everyone who's heard of Kanban probably uses Trello. Trello recently sold to Asana for like $500 million, which is crazy. They weren't making that much, anything like enough to quantify that, but they had so many free customers and so much headspace, so much, what's it called? Name recognition, I guess, that Asana probably thought that alone was worth it. So Trello is terrible for repeating tasks, which, by the way, is most of our work every day. When Trello added a power up, which if you're on the free plan, you only get one, or like they're kind of hidden, it's confusing, I don't even understand it. They wrote Trello card repeater, how to stick regular tasks on repeat. Literally the most boring headline in the world. And it got 100 comments. To me, this indicates audience thirst for something that is, pardon my language, boring as fuck. Yeah. No one's like, oh man, I would pay so much money for repeating tasks, except maybe they actually would, as evidenced by their activity. It was really exciting is that Lifehacker, which is a blog that a lot of like productivity people read, creative people who do things like to read Lifehacker, or creative people who want to do things read Lifehacker. They wrote a post about the post, and their headline was "Stay on top of your morning and weekly routines with recurring Trello cards." So right away, I see that people talk about routines as something important for creative people who make things or who want to make things. And it got 41,000 shares. This is my face. 41,000 shares, you guys, for something that boring, to me indicates so much pain. Here's something else. Here's a tweet that I saw, which turned out to be ripped from a Tumblr post that had even more shares. She tweeted, I enjoy video games because they let me live out my wildest fantasies, like being assigned a task and then completing that task. And it got 16,000 retweets and 31,000 likes and so many more thousands on the original Tumblr post and all the other people who also copied it. This mordant humor, like, is a type of coping strategy that wallpapers over pain, right? So people have this huge hole inside them of suffering, and they're like, I can't fix it, I can't fill it, so I'm just gonna hide it with sarcastic jokes. Mordant humor screams there's pain behind this. People really don't feel like their work is well defined or that they get a reward like internally when they complete something because the work is never done. And I think that's really important. So I always like snarky, dark, sarcastic jokes about productivity or work or business type stuff because it reveals where the pain is. And humor is itself a coping strategy. And then there are other coping strategies that led me towards software that would do specifically this type of support work. Again, on Lifehacker, they had a post about how 1 hour can save you a week's worth of hassle and headache, the weekly review. Lifehacker didn't invent this. Even Getting Things Done, which popularized it, didn't invent it. But this post from 5 years ago has had 261,000 shares. Not a lot of comments. I often find that people don't comment on articles that are really self-contained that like answer all their questions. But 260,000 shares on doing the weekly review of your past week, and so you can adjust your weekly plan for the next week, all work related. That's a lot. That's a coping strategy too. To me, if you have this kind of formal process that you have to execute on your own, it is indicating that somewhere else, a product or tool or something else is letting you down. It's like a, again, like a sort of like a wallpapering over. It's like, there's pain back here. Here's a screenshot of a few days from my calendar, my personal calendar. I've blocked off some of what the things are, but I'm guessing that most of you probably also have calendars like this. I know that this is something common that I've seen on other people's calendars to manage anything that they do weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly. They put it in the calendar, even though calendars like apps are really not set up for tasks, that they're really for appointments, like from 3 to 5 p.m. meet with Joe, right? That's what calendars are for. But calendars are the tool that lets you do click, repeat, and then specify, which basically no other tool lets you do really. And so when you go look at your calendar on your phone, every freaking day has a little dot on it in the big view, and you can't tell until you click on it whether those are appointments or just random crap you shoved in there because it will repeat and remind you. That is a coping strategy that causes more pain. And by the way, of all of the things on this calendar, only one of them is an actual meeting. It's that orange one. So repeating tasks, important. Recurring tasks, important. Feeling accomplished by doing all the random shit we have to do every day that doesn't like dramatically move us forward on some exciting project, important. Looking at project management software is where I went next, because I want to know what is in the lives of the people who have these problems. So I start to look at other products that they buy that I know are like super popular or super profitable, or like when people think of this thing, they always think of this product. That is not Safari exactly, but it's part of the research process, because you can't literally zoom in someone's house and watch them go about their day of work. But you can look at the things that they used to do their work that you know they do and see what sucks. Well, in Basecamp and most other project management tools, there's no such thing as a repeating task or a recurring task. Or if it is, it's like Trello. It's like really awkwardly horned in. All of the project management tools go for sort of the waterfall model of product management. You think it's all like conversation based. The product management tool is about creating tasks after you've already decided everything that you have to do. And some project management tools like Basecamp make the conversation of like deciding what to do the main interface. Like you have conversations, that's the main thing that you do in Basecamp. And other ones just focus on like deadlines and tasks. So it's difficult to do what I'm talking about, what is being revealed to me as a major problem in existing tools. This is a screenshot from Asana. Asana does recurring tasks, but I tried it. It is horrific to use. So it might as well not be there. And Asana is probably one of the most popular, widespread, and profitable project management tools in our industries at large. So that's quite interesting. They sell that you can track projects from start to finish. But then what? What about when the project is done? I feel like that content leaves something interesting. As I said, the recurring in Trello is awkward, hidden, and clunky. Here's a screenshot. If you look at the interface, like the screen of the repeat, you're like, that doesn't look too bad. But the way that it integrates in the actual boards is horrific. Trello was meant for dragging things from one column to the other, and things that repeat are never done. You never get to drag them or move them. So it breaks the entire metaphor of Trello. And like the weekly review, there are other types of products that people who are entrepreneurs and the creative professionals who want to create products, who do create products, planners. There's a reason that GIF of Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec saying she's jamming on her planner is so popular in productivity and like creative circles, because a lot of us look to paper to solve problems that software creates for us. So here's just one example. The Freedom Journal is like a project management journal by the guy behind Entrepreneur on Fire. He really knows what he's doing with Kickstarters. He managed to pre-sell $454,000 of a journal, as in a book that's blank, that you fill out, that's supposed to help guide you to accomplishing the creation of whatever creative thing you want to do. I think that's pretty incredible and noteworthy and very intense. Now, another thing I always tell my students that I've learned the hard way with the whole To Story Desktop thing is you need to look, are people already doing this thing, using tools, paying for software or books or training or whatever, discussing amongst themselves how to get it done, how to solve the problem? Do they work on improving their ability to do whatever it is? And the answer for this, for productivity, for managing a business, for outsourcing, all of these things are resounding yes. People are obsessed with productivity. It's one of the most popular self-help categories. It makes so much money for companies around the world. People are always trying to do better, and they really do learn new things and try new software. So, yay, good sign for me. Lastly, if there's one thing that separates me from other people who sell products and who teach how to sell products, perhaps most importantly, it's that, to me, the most important thing, that was a really awkward sentence, is that I look for what isn't there, what's missing. So when people, for example, you see that lots of blog posts are super popular and there aren't any comments, or like there are just missing holes in what all the tools that people use. Like all the tools do XYZ, none of them do ABC, which is the way that humans are. What's not there is really indicative of something where maybe you can get in there. I'm not expressing that really well. I think I need more coffee, but let me demonstrate. So, told you this talk wasn't like super polished. It's more fun this way, isn't it? This is real me. So, all project management tools and journals assume that work is from start to finish. And the Asana sales page very handily said that: manage your projects from start to finish. Manage start to finish. That's some work for sure. some things go from the beginning. You work, then it's done, and then you're done with it forever. But that's not the way most of real life or real work is, especially if you are the boss and running your own business, or you're creating a product that you want to sell and market and build a business with, or if you work with a team or if you outsource. Any of these things, they're not linear, begin, middle, end, and then you're done with it. Very few things in life actually end at the finish line. You have to maintain them, grow them, keep emailing your list so they don't forget about you. You have to make sure that your software as a service backup is working so that you don't lose customer data. All these kinds of things are actually a cycle that just goes on and on and on and on and on. And so this is what's missing in our world of project management. And this is why people are so into patching strategies like weekly reviews and sticking post notes all over their monitors and shoehorning all these tasks and reminders into the calendar, because it's literally the only thing that lets them do it. So that middle of the cycle there is a big fat hole, and I'm going to fill it. And yes, I just said that. So the tools don't reflect reality. They make it really hard. I want to solve that painful problem for people, because currently the gulf between the reality of how people work and the reality where people want to be, knowing what they're supposed to be doing, seeing progress, not forgetting important recurring tasks, being able to communicate with people, seeing if, Joe checked the backup like he's supposed to without having to have a conversation about it. And remember, that gulf is the pain. And when you find that pain in 3500, you learn a method called fix storming, because when you find the pain, it's called pain storming. And I was like running out of creative word ideas. And it's a really systematic way to go from the core pain that we talked about, that gulf between reality and desired reality, and to break it down to its component parts, mistakes or misunderstandings or like bad tools, and what the effects of those are, and then how you can work on attacking those effects to both build your list and audience and trust by educating people on smaller points, and then to sell them a product. So this is really very systematic. Nothing else there is out there is like this. If you want to learn this, it just is like catnip to you. You're like, oh my God, show me how to do that, which is how I would feel in your position. Take 30 by 500. I have nearly killed myself coming up with this really systematic way to attack pain points and turn them into product ideas. And I use this to come up with Sweep, because you look at the different problems people have and how they solve them, and they're like, well, there doesn't have to be an app, right? There's different ways to attack this problem. You could educate people about like a process, like weekly review. You could sell them journals. You could sell them sticky notes. You could sell them, whiteboards that are, printed in special ways. You could maybe like hack the way Kanban works, like either Real World or Trello. You could sell them a journal for $450,000. Or you could like make a better calendar app that does better with tasks. But I'm just like, you know what? No, I think the actual best solution for this actual thing of recurring tasks is software, because software is really good at repeating things. And if you use any of these other things, you have to do the work to make the things repeat, which to me is crazy. So I came up with a product that solves that gap. That would be a tool. And I knew that I wanted to visualize recurring tasks. You don't have to put them in a calendar and then they're like overwhelming in each little calendar box. It should be clean. It should be beautiful. It should be blatantly obvious what does and does not have to get done. It should answer that core question of what should I do next, so that it can kill the anxiety or the feeling that they're missing something or that they're not getting anywhere, and deliver a feeling of accomplishment, track their progress over time, and empower outsourcing or sharing of tasks between teammates or partners or friends. So that really narrows it down, doesn't it? Like, we've gone from, well, I'm going to build a project management SaaS that will probably end up looking like every other project management SaaS, to really having an outline of what the product should do. And that is the way to do it. Because if you sit down and you think, I'm going to write a book or I'm going to build an app, you're going to end up with something that looks like everything else, and it won't be easy to sell because it'll be like everything else, because those other people didn't do this process. And of course, this is what you learn in 30 by 500. So Sweep. Showed you the screenshot earlier, but now I'm going to walk you through it real quick. The thing about Sweep is that you look at this screenshot and you're like, I immediately see what has to be done. The other things that I've done are green and they're faded out. The work that I need to do jumps out at me, but I also see what I've already done today. I feel how much work I've done already. And also, I didn't take a screenshot, but when you click in, it shows you your hit rate. Like each time you click off or don't click off a repeating task, you either get a little green dot or a little pink dot. And so you can look at a glance and see how you're doing, and you can see who did it and when did they do it. And that's why people are really excited to try Sweep, even though it is super boring on the face of it. I'm also not making a giant product. That's a huge mistake. I've made it, but I've seen lots of people make this mistake. I made it with Charm. Many people make this when they start out their first product and they end up not shipping anything or shipping a huge thing only to discover that it doesn't work. People don't like it. Sweep and any other good product does one thing really, really well. It's not about MVP. It's not minimum viable. It's about really helping with one of the pains. Not all of them. There's like 50 different pains we could tackle with this, but we're working really hard on one of them, which is the recurring tasks. The other stuff will come over time, and that is how we are being able to ship so quickly. And by the way, in 3500, this technique, as opposed to MVP, is called the creative atom, because I just have to name everything myself because it is a bit different, and I like words. So, design. I'm going to take a quick break here and drink my drink. See if you guys are still with me. You still with me? I need some fluids. All right, guys. Oh, apologizing because I'm going to end up burping from this. Red Bull actually helps me with my dysautonomia symptoms, believe it or not. Cool. Alistair says, using your Rolodex for task scheduling. So Rob says that Basecamp is great for recurring tasks, the automatic check-in feature. It doesn't really compete with what I'm doing. Cool. If you missed the first part, everything's being recorded. I'll probably cut this part out when I post the video. So we're about to get even nerdier because I'm going to talk about design frameworks and not like Bootstrap. I mean like conceptual frameworks. Whew, lots of talking. Oh my God, it's been almost an hour. I can't believe it. All right, I'm going to dive back in now. Let's talk about design. So, design is really, I think, a twofold thing. People think about design, they think about designing screens and buttons and functions and workflow. Pardon me, that's the Red Bull. But when you design an app or a product or a book or a course, you also have to use your design process to figure out how you will get the product out the door. Because if you design every little thing you could ever do to solve every pain, anticipate every use case, you are going to be designing a product that you will never be able to ship. You will be working on it forever. So that in mind. A lot of people give lip service, I think, to user experience and user interface. And it's very tempting when you're a designer, especially when you've been doing consulting or when you've been working with someone else, to focus on designing individual screens of the app and to a lesser degree, how they connect in a workflow. The problem is that when you have a boss or a client, they want deliverables. But your job is not typically dependent on whether that's ideal for the customer. It's very rare that if the app looks nice and works pretty nicely, that the designer will be blamed if the product doesn't sell. And it's not your fault anyway, you're not the decision maker. But when you're sitting down to create a product, whether it's a software as a service or desktop app or whatever, book, same thing. I always consider what the actual task is, why they want to do it, and how do they do it now, and how should it be done. And the closest thing, design framework to how I work, the one that's really inspired me, is activity-centered design. So many of the other user interface theories focus on personas or, audience questions of like, what do they like? That kind of thing. I don't think that personas tell you all that much about how a user wants tools to behave. If a group of people with very divergent interests and personal styles and cars and favorite colors and favorite bands complete the same kind of task, they will mostly do it very similarly, because the task, the activity, is the thing that they're all interacting with, and not their personal feelings about, I don't know, wanting to get home on time. Personas are more important for consumer products that do not sell on value, that do not involve engaging in work, that are lifestyle products. But when you're talking about teaching someone a job skill, supporting their work at work, etc., the activity or the task is where you should look. And I can't go into the details of activity-centered design, except that it's all about the person doing the work, the subject or creator, the object or tool that's being interacted with, the object or receiver, the motivation, what the activity is, rules and rituals of the way people work, and the other tools and artifacts that people already use and are familiar with. So I really recommend looking up activity-centered design. It's very interesting. And you can also Google action theory, which is the more academic work that inspired this slightly more useful design framework. And of course, in what we're talking about, the actual work behavior is to do things over and over again, either solo or on a team, whether you're doing one part of a workflow, such as I'm drafting the blog post and then it's someone else's job to edit it and I hand that off, and that happens over and over again as a workflow, or whether it's something that you have to do every day, week, month, year, or whether it's something that you need your employee to do every day, week, month, year, or your partner to do every day, week, month, year. It is a cycle. That is the actual work behavior, the activity. So we know that people use Kanban and they use calendars. I start with questions about the tools and situations that people are already living, like the ways that they already work that aren't working. What questions do they leave them with that I should be answering? So the core questions, the core pains are, as I mentioned earlier, what should I be doing? What's been done? I said that it's hard to manage the rhythm. It's easy to forget, lose track of what has been done or should be done on a recurring basis, or who did it, or did you do it last week? I forget already. Did I do it last week? That kind of thing. There's way too much work to execute chrono recurring work in regular existing apps. Calendars are awful. Project management. Who did it? How did it go? Are we improving over time? These are the core questions that I want my app to answer for the customer. And you'll see in the side here that I said there's a chrono cycle of repeating tasks, recurring tasks, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And of course, within weeks, months, and quarters, there's like specific days of the week or specific due dates, but also projects that you do over and over, like producing blog posts or podcasts or case studies or new client onboarding. These are projects that you do over and over again. The deliverable has many repetitive subtasks. That's a workflow, which I'll get into later. I also look for real world models. Is there anything out there in the world that already kind of works that I could borrow from or be inspired by? And it turns out specifically for this, that lean manufacturing, like not lean startup, but lean manufacturing with actual machinery on the floor and throughput of items that need to be built and then shipped, supply chain stuff, has a lot of really effective management tools, especially visual management. This is the TPM board, and this is what inspired me to create Sweep. And as I took the screenshot from this video, I realized that there's actually the word sweep on it, and I'm guessing that's possibly subliminally where the name came from. A TPM board is for managing tasks or audits. It's complicated. You have green card, red card. It's red on one side, green on the other. Green is done, red is not done. So you can literally take a glance at the board and immediately see how much work isn't done. Sounds familiar? Yes, I stole shamelessly from this idea. There are no tools to do this in regular life. It is all physical. It is not left in manufacturing space. So I'm really excited to bring something that works to another audience who can benefit from it. Inspiration is everywhere. I also find that like written journals and worksheets and things like that are also inspiring, sometimes in the case of what not to do, but it's always good to look at what does and doesn't work that people are already doing. It's the tools and artifacts. So design-wise, this is how I design. I'm a graphic designer as well. I do visual design, but when I'm working on a new app, the most important thing to me is really basic, sketchy wireframes that show the user experience and the flow from different parts of the app. So this is the design that I showed to Thomas, who's doing the development work, and said, this is what I want to build. And I'm like, do you know how this thing we do in our real life is so problematic? And he's like, yes. I'm like, why doesn't software do this? He's like, I never thought of it that way. And I'm like, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And then you would have this benefit, and you would no longer have this pain. I basically pitched my husband on the product, and it worked. And this is what I used. This is the very basic to start. I've also designed future features that will, for example, show you things that are overdue, catch-ups, tasks that are due on a certain time of the week versus just anywhere at the end of the week, and so on and so forth. Focus mode. These features are all deferred. All deferred. They are not necessary for launch. They are not going to be developed all that soon. They will eventually get there if the way people use the app supports it. They're theories at this time, but they're deferred. And this is important because none of these are critical to ship. So I designed it on a separate page and said, we'll do this someday. I've also designed it for more complicated use cases, like something that you do twice a month. You don't want to have the card go from green to red again in the middle of the month, from done to undone. But you also don't want to lose the progress of like, well, the connection of, well, I did the payroll on the 10th, but I also need to do it on the 26th. Those two things, they're the same task, but they're not the same card, because you don't want your done work to disappear. So I've come up with a way to do task inheritance, to treat these more complicated tasks. People have already asked about this actually before seeing this, and it is deferred. It'll come later. For now, you can just create 2 cards. It won't be the end of the world. I also want to use Sweep for workflow. So like I said, producing a blog post or a case study or onboarding a client or onboarding a new customer. I also want to use this type of workflow to essentially offer a way to interact with our email courses and lessons so that people can get through those and see their progress and have the information on how to do each task right there in the card. This is definitely some advanced stuff, and it is deferred. Cut it if you want to live. So once I get to the doodles in a way that makes sense to me, I get slightly more granular in wireframes. They still don't look like software, and that's totally fine. This lets you put workflows, repeating workflows like creating a blog post in your weekly or daily or whatever rotation. So you have a workflow, but it's also chrono-based, and this is half deferred. This is partially implemented. This will get implemented sooner than some of the other features, but we're not worrying about it being completely done to ship. This is important. It's not the core function. So here's my basic Creative Atom right here in the doodles. And that's what we have now. Like, this works really well in the current app. In terms of Creative Atom, I mentioned earlier that the landing page for Sweep is literally the worst. This is what it looks like. Quick and dirty, my friends. It's just a screenshot. Before we had a good screenshot, it was actually just this picture. And I would tweet about it. This is good enough to collect 500 names for our launch when we do launch. I've already got like 50 early access people in here, and this is good enough. And people get really obsessed with their perfect squeeze pages with all their great copy. And believe me, I believe in the power of copy. It is important, but it's good enough for version 1. This is part of the designing to shipping. You have to let go of stuff. You have to cut stuff if you want your product to live. So speaking of cutting stuff and making your product live, quick tour through the development process. It is important, obviously, that you resist many of the urges of the developer to work with the new and shiny and fun stuff. My husband is a perfect match for me because we are both really grumpy old people. He's laughing. I don't know if you can hear that. Super cardioid mic. But we have learned the most painful lesson with charm. Never, ever, 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 ever will we spend a long time developing a product and making it perfect before we ship it. Never, ever, 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 ever will we make it more complicated than it has to be technically because it's interesting or because it sounds snazzy or we think it'll be some advantage. So we don't use Node or React or whatever, the Angular, any of these frameworks or anything. It's just plain old Rails with, for the nerds among you, turbo links. We really keep the JavaScript simple. We have the workflow for creating and editing, sharing boards, and adding chronological tasks, repeating, checking them off, etc. We got it deployed in 5 days for the very alpha version with the CDN and support site and backups. So that is pretty great. That is what you should go for, if at all possible. It may take you more than 5 days because Thomas is very, very fast. But the thing is, you have to let go. You have to let go. It would be great to do certain things, to use certain things, but you have to decide between enjoying, like, learning something new or trying something crazy or the satisfaction of doing something really difficult or shiny and getting the product out there in a way that you can build on it and actually get people using it and get people paying for it and solve their problems. It's a difficult switch to make, especially when, as an employee or a consultant, you get paid extra to make things fancier or use the newest technologies because that makes your company seem competitive, or it makes your skill set seem more valuable. That stuff does not matter to the customer, and you have to consistently ask yourself, what does my customer need? We also deployed on Heroku, which is way too expensive to run an app on long term. It was fine to start with. We just wanted to get it online. It's really good for that. The key is to make the tools work for you instead of you working to make the tools work. One thing that it is important to take the time to think about is your data model. So lots of people, lots of apps out there are basically CRUD apps. They're create, read, update, delete. And they actually build that, people build the app. It's very natural to build an app to basically create database records. But the magic of a tool like Sweep or Freckle or Basecamp or whatever is that the actual logic of the app is divorced from the data model. It needs the data model, of course, but you're not just basically filling out a glorified survey form that then posts into a database. That the app does a lot of the thinking for you and processing for you and creates meaning out of simple database records. However, that also usually means your data model is more complicated. This was version 1 of the data model. It has gone through some revisions. But as you can see, it is not UML. It is not even digital. It was written on a piece of paper. Thomas made up his own relationship notation instead of using an existing one because he was too lazy to go look it up. It's been a long time. Keep it simple. Make it look like a kidney. That was a joke. Another principle that you developer types are probably familiar with, but it bears repeating, is YAGNI. Possibly the most awkward acronym ever. It stands for You Ain't Gonna Need It. Focus on wins for your user for being able to get it out the door and not technical perfection. For example, I said Thomas and I are curmudgeons. We are curmudgeonly about test-driven development. When you're looking at critical data, when you're looking at billing information, when you're looking at deleting user data, and all these things, tests are 100% required. If you are inviting people to alpha access for like a project management tool, you do not need to do test-driven development. You need to do user-driven development. Because the worst case scenario, someone accidentally loses, 20 minutes of work creating cards. Very upsetting. That's why you tell people up front, it's alpha. That's why you do database backups. It is much slower to do test-driven development. And people are going to fight me on this. I can't even see the chat room, but I know someone's disagreeing with me. Test-driven development is very important for crucial, critical, mission-critical data. When you're taking people's money, when the data is very important, when the data must be secure, things like that. Absolutely test-driven development, 100% of the time. I don't care how fast you want to ship. When it's about getting a product to live enough that people can click on it and like get feedback, it's not important. It's more important to show the user something. So does the user need tests for absolutely everything? Eventually, yes. When you're charging money, definitely. When people are heavily using it, yes. When you're saying this is an alpha, I just want to get you in to look at it, no. Does the user need it? That's the most important question. So because we use Rails and JavaScript frameworks, most of that JavaScript 4,600 lines is actually, pardon me, framework stuff. The 3-week-old Rails app is so tiny, only 2,600 lines of code with a really crappy code to test ratio. But this is what's powering our app right now. It's not a lot. And that is not accidental. That's by design. When you use something like Rails or whatever framework you are really comfortable with, if it makes development really fast and really easy, if it helps you get a product that actually does something useful into the customer's hands sooner, that's what you should do. So I would say now that Sweep is not quite alpha, but also not quite beta. It's not as feature complete enough that I would call it beta. It's getting close, but there's a lot of stuff that we have left out as of now, 3 weeks old. We don't have a billing system. We don't really have a permission system. I actually need to update this slide. We do now have time zone support. We have partial workflows, which is the recurring multi-step process stuff I was talking about. We don't have task templates. Do we have card deletion? We have card deletion now. I was wrong. Things change quickly. We don't have any kind of fancy early access system with like credits or like people jumping the line. You don't think we can delete cards? Apparently, we don't know if we can delete cards. Jury's still out of whether we can delete cards. We don't have a fancy early access system. We actually have a board that we just invite people to, and then they get a Sweep account. And until a couple of days ago, anyone who got invited to that board could change that board. So I had a card in there that said, please don't change this board. Very ad hoc. Now you can make a board share only. But there's so many things that we have put off in order to get Sweep launched. And that's what you have to do if you want to get a product out the door quickly. You must commit to things that you can drop. Obviously, before we start charging, we have to build a billing system. But even then, we're going to use the simplest thing possible, Stripe or whatever. Thomas is doing the research, not me. We're going to go with something simple that will be easy to replace later if we need to change things. Same goes for the permission system. We used a library. What's it called? What's the permissions thing called that gave us some basic stuff? We use Devise to get the most basic permission system in place. We'll build on that later, and so on and so forth. Sweep is under heavy development. I mean, when you're going to launch a product in just a matter of weeks, you need to work on it pretty much every day, or at least set aside 1 day a week to really like dig into it. Just today, we sent out the very first daily agenda emails that will show you what is due for your day, because we want to really support people so they don't even have to go into the app. And we're going to be able to mix in stuff from workflows and things as well, give people a heads up a certain number of days in the future, and people can just click them and flip it right from there. So we're getting close to the actual launch. We haven't launched it. We've got 500 names on a list. We've got 50 something early access users. We were getting feedback and talking to people. But as you saw on my board, I'm working on launch stuff even now, because even though we're not ready to charge money, we are really working towards launch without big buildup. My approach is to, as the subtitle says, let 1,000 launches bloom, not to focus on the big day, but you do have to launch or your project will literally die. More products die having never seen the light of day than are launched and failed. So it's very important to get to launch as soon as possible, as long as that doesn't mean you're going to lose people's data or accidentally triple charge their credit cards. So I started to drum up interest in Sweep by sharing insider stuff into how I'm making Sweep, which is super meta because I'm now giving a talk that's an insider view into Sweep about how I've used insider views into Sweep to build up interest in Sweep. That was a difficult sentence. Do I get a cookie for keeping that straight? When you serve your audience, when you serve an audience like you, people like me are interested in the insider stuff of work that I'm doing because they're interested in that sort of thing. They're like me. I'm interested in when other people show insider stuff. No one doesn't like insider stuff. And that's another benefit of serving your audience. So as you can see, this tweet offered absolutely nothing innate of value except an insider look into something I'm building and want to promote. Got, a fair amount of likes, several retweets. It didn't even have a link yet. I have followed up and updated this thread on like the features we added or like decisions we made or things like this. I have made 2 or 3 times a week a tour video showing the new stuff in Sweep. I posted it to the YouTube channel and tweeted the link with the link to the sales page. People can like sign up for early access, and just drumming up slowly support and interest for Sweep while not actually doing a graded launch, building up to a day where people pay me. So when I teach people how to launch products, I show that there's like a 5 to 7 email arc where you talk about different types of pain and then painting a picture of the future, and then you send them, you teach them things so they can get an improvement now, and then you're like, if you want more, then you should buy the product, and the offer page also follows sort of similar model as the emails as a whole, and then you can actually open the doors and people will sign up and use the product and pay you money. But this is actually kind of a macro view of what I'm doing now, even though I'm not doing it nearly systematically. So as I mentioned earlier, when I actually did this presentation, when I worked on this presentation last week, it was 304 subscribers. Now it's, or as of a couple hours ago, it was 494 subscribers. So I've gotten almost 500 people to sign up interested in a product that's not even public yet, that doesn't have a sales page with copy, that doesn't have a lot of features polished, doesn't have a way to pay, etc. Pardon me. And I've been doing this, like I said, by tweeting. I send out an email. I'm like just drip, 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 drip. And each time I post something, it sort of amps things up a little bit. A couple more people sign up. A couple more people sign up. It doesn't have to be a big launch day. Being able to launch to a list of, say, 1,000 people or 500 people or even 200 people or 100 people who are interested in your product is better than working up to some theoretic perfect launch, finally saying, here, I have this thing, and having no one to say it to. A lot of people work on a big launch for their software as a service or membership community or something like that. If they don't already have a large audience, the chances are you will launch to no sales because people don't instantly buy things that require a lot of commitment to start using or to start getting value from, or that require a monthly fee. People have to work up to it. So the more that you can get in front of people, even with little stuff, anything that's like catnip to them, like a tidbit, a little trick that they should use, an insight into your process, because they're part of your audience, you're in their audience, there's professional interest there. Any of these things, do them repeatedly, do them daily. That's why it's on my Sweep board to do every day. And it works better than a big launch. When we launched Freckle, we had a little squeeze page that was better than the Sweep one. And I think we had about 1,400, 1,500 people on that list. And now I'm not certain if that's the exact number because that's the dollar revenue we got. But it wasn't a lot. It was like over 1,000, but not like 5,000. I forget exactly. It's been a long time. Sorry. It wasn't a big list, but we were able to launch to a handful of sales. It's about about $1,400 a month in sales for a professional product for professionals who were interested in that particular problem. They were the most interested people on the list, most interested people on the internet who signed up as being interested. If we had worked up to a much bigger, fancier launch, but hadn't built that little list, we would have actually made fewer sales. If we had thought, okay, well, that was our big launch day, but we're only getting $1,400 a month from it, that sucks. We failed. We would have failed. The product wouldn't have succeeded. Software as a service, they all, membership, any type of thing like that, monthly revenue, you have to build it up slowly. So there's no point in putting all that pressure on the perfect launch day, highly publicized. People are going to expect the product to be perfect. It hurts you more than it helps you, is what I'm saying. Don't put all your eggs in one big launch day basket. Don't believe the big launch myth. Don't fall for the hype. Don't give yourself what I call post-launch depression when it doesn't meet your expectations. Do little drips, little launches. Each one is an opportunity to convert 1 or 2 people. That is the way to go, and that's the way that I suggest you do. Eventually, I'm going to write a sales page. There's a whole framework that I use. I call it PDF, Pain, Dream, Fix, where you raise the customer's pains and then you show them a picture of a better world, and then you show how your product does that. It's just like this graph that I showed you earlier. You pick their reality, and then you taunt them as effectively with love with their desired reality. The reason it's so important to focus on the pain and not just offer benefits right away is because people often don't really realize that they're in pain because they have all these coping strategies. They've tuned it out. When someone really turns a laser focus on them and says, "Don't you do this every day?" They're like, "Yes." And then the copy says, "And doesn't that suck?" They're like, "Huh. I hadn't thought of it, but now that you mention it, yes." And they're like, "Wouldn't it be nice if?" "Oh, yes, it would." And then they're in your hand because they're really excited to make that jump from the reality to their desired reality. And that bridge that you offer is the product. I go into this in great detail in 3500. There's multiple lessons on how to write your copy. I think it's some of the best stuff I've done. I think you would enjoy it. But for Sweep specifically, the ideal that we're going to offer them is the results of repetitive work, which is boring, but the stress-free confidence of knowing what's been done, what to do next, and how you've been doing, feeling of progress. So that's what I'm going to focus on in the copy when I get to writing it in probably a couple weeks. And you can check out the sales page for Charm. If you're curious, long copy, it did so well for us. It's charmhq.com, but you have to enter it in the Internet Archive because it's no longer online. It's too sad to have it up. Pricing. Literally have one slide for pricing. People overthink this big time. I know lots of people who haven't shipped their product because they're scared of picking a price. Because they're scared of picking the wrong price, they won't pick a price. And because they won't pick a price, they can't actually launch the product. They can't make any sales, and the product is effectively dead even though it's done. Don't let this be you. We are going to start with $19, $39, and $99 plus a small free plan that's limited. $19 is for 1 to 3 people. $39 is for a bigger team. $99 will be unlimited. It is simple, and because we're not lowballing it with a price under $10, we will not attract the worst type of customer. You think free customers are bad? Customers who pay like $7 are worse because not only do they feel entitled, they actually are sort of entitled because you did take their money. So never price too low. You can always offer a lower price later. You can always change your prices later. Customers will not be angry if you change your prices later, as long as if you're raising prices, if you keep them at the price they already pay, grandfather them, they won't care. If you lower the prices, lower it for everyone, they will be happy. So don't worry about pricing. It is not that big a deal, especially for a software as a service or membership program. So that is Sweep. That is a deep dive into how I came up with the idea for the product. I did my competitive research. I did my sales safari. I know how to talk to my customers. I started to build interest, build my list, how we designed for shipping, how we're implementing it quickly and easily with existing tools off the shelf, and how we're pricing it and how we're going to finish launching it quickly and soon. If you're interested in learning step by step the process that I've used, you can take my class 30 by 500. We are going to be launching it and closing it again by mid-August, which is the first time this year because I've been busy. If you do want to register early, you'll save $100. Just let me know. And now I'm going to go to questions. Yeah, please post your questions to the left. So, Chris Mann asked, top voted question. Hey, it would be great if you would talk about how you approach or get those first customers through the door. Obviously, if you do Safari and contact the people who describe the pain, you're solving great. But how do you reach other people who have that pain? I've tried cold emailing qualified people, which works to a degree, but my experience is people are very defensive or dismissive when approached out of the blue. Is there a better way of finding these people? Yes. I think that most of your question has been answered by the presentation. I went into great nerdy detail. But I don't recommend cold emailing people. I don't recommend cold calling people. It is rude, which is, not likely to make you any friends. But also, that is not the way to reach people. And if you follow the 30/100 system, which there's a post on my blog called the E-Bomb strategy that really works, I believe is the title. You get in front of them by educating them with educational content, tips, jokes, roundups, guides, screencasts, webinars. You could talk at a local event, or you could do an online one. Get them on your email list by educating them, offering them something of value for free, dropping a link to your blog post on professional forums, getting other people to share it, etc. That's how you get in front of people. It's essentially interest-based, permission-based. You show up and you help them, and then they get interested in learning more about your product. Some of these questions have already been answered. Scott asks, I ran across a software as a service recently that a group I'm in pays for all the members to use. It's dated, hard to use, and will be easy to innovate or improve on. It has what appears to be approximately 2,000 signups. I assume that means users. So it looks like the idea is pre-validated. Would this be a good first SaaS? Sidebar, I've built SaaS apps for clients, or would this be attacking too large of a target? Should I run the playbook, landing page, email list, market to existing groups, MVP? So it is really tempting to look at a single existing product and think, that sucks, I could do it better. Which I totally believe, by the way. I totally believe that you could do that better. The question is, are those people going to change? Are they willing to swap? Are they willing to put in the effort to move, to pay for something new, to learn something new? A lot of groups appear to pay for things are actually very resistant to change. For example, Excel users. Every week someone launches an Excel killer, and they don't understand that people don't want to kill Excel. They fucking love Excel. You will pull Excel from their cold, dead fingers. And people feel passionate about that, but other times they just don't want to change. So 2,000 signups, if that's your addressable market for this product, it's not very big. I would see, what else do people pay for? Do they swap around a lot? Do they complain about it? And then do they follow up their complaints with actions? Very important. So I hope that helps. One product is not validated. It's not pre-validation. It's not a very large market. You don't know how they actually behave, aside from potentially paying for that. You also don't know how many of those customers are paying. So basically, the best way to find out is to go out there and really do sales safari on the audience and audiences like that, rather than try to do a shortcut with looking at one product. Damon asks if 30 by 500 is only for new products. The answer is, in short, No, you can absolutely use the processes in 3500 to improve an existing product if it can be improved. So usually we say if you've made at least $1,000 in sales, then that to me says that you can fix your product and make it better, make your marketing better, make your product better, make the sales pitch better, make your content strategy better, grow your email list, and so on. If you haven't made any sales, you might want to be open to the idea that you've picked the wrong type of thing and you've built something that people don't want. It's not guaranteed. 3500, the way the lessons are formatted is for new products. However, the rules, as I've shown you, they apply to existing products as well. Ismail asks, have we found user interviews to be completely useless and misleading, or could it be okay if done right, like the whole idea extraction stuff or the kind of approach suggested by Steve Portugal? I don't know his stuff specifically, so I'm not going to comment on anything that he specifically has done. I think that user interviews of actual users who are already using your product can be extremely useful. Typically, when people say user or customer interviews, they actually mean people who haven't bought or used your product, which I'm sure that there are people in the world who can get valuable data out of that, but you have to be extremely good at asking questions and interpreting people when they just flat out lie to you, often unintentionally, as I said. So I think it's way safer to look at what people actually do, or to only talk to and observe people who are already using your product to learn about how they use your product rather than would they use a product like yours. Hope that helps. Very negative. Let's see. Corey asks if the content in the 30 by 100 course is much more in-depth than our blog. You have no idea how in-depth it is. Just those diagrams showing you how to come up with infinite product ideas, there's like 30 minutes of lessons just on that. If you think my blog posts are exhausting, exhaustive. I hope they're not exhausting. Exhaustive. Wait till you see 30 by 500. Oh, my throat is dry. It is extremely, extremely in-depth. There's exercises. There's ways to grade yourself. We are going to start doing twice monthly live online Q&A. There's a Slack community to hang out with. It's extremely detailed, and we're adding new stuff to it as well, now that I'm no longer deathly ill. So I hope that helps. There are a couple of free lessons on my blog. I will put a link somewhere. I think if you go to our YouTube channel, Stacking the Bricks. I should have that handy. Oh, well. Oh, hey, Alex can provide links to example lessons. Yay. Hey, Alex. Yes, there will be recording. So Damon asks a question about Sweep. Will it be open for alpha, beta, or early bird access soon? Actually, we've already started inviting people in. If you would like in now, just email me, reply to one of the emails that I've sent by the mailing list or however you ended up here, and I would be happy to invite you in right now. In terms of like beta access and starting to charge for it, we're probably going to be opening it to open signups within the next week or two, and we'll probably start charging intro prices, like the prices I said, but a discount within another 2 weeks. But I'm not going to hold to a super strict schedule on that, because why? So we'll see soon. So Wilkins asked the question, when validating an idea and talking with prospective customers, what are some good questions to ask? I've already said why asking people by customer interviews get you bad data, because people are optimistic or dishonest, or they don't have a good insight into what they actually do and what they actually buy, and they're overly optimistic. Again, I don't think people are lying intentionally. I think none of us have great insight into ourselves and what we'll really do in the future. But specifically what questions to ask, The thing is, when you ask a question, you like take all the potential things that you could learn and you like nail them down into a tiny fraction of what is out there to learn. It's like Schrodinger's question, right? Is the cat alive or is it dead? You don't know until you open the box. And once you've picked the box that you open, the answer is almost like the amount of learning you can do is so reduced. Asking a question, all questions are leading questions, unless you can just get someone to talk. And even better than just getting someone to talk is to just observe what they actually do. And then you have such a broader field of potential learning that observation is so much more powerful than asking questions. I believe asking the right questions of people interviewing is extremely difficult. It is a really, really valuable skill. I don't know if you've ever interviewed someone for like a video or a podcast or whatever. It's really hard to be good at that. So you could either focus on learning how to ask questions, which still will give you like not great data, or you can learn to observe people and without them even like realizing that they're creating valuable information for you. And then you can learn to turn that into insight that makes you money. And then you can do it whenever, whether or not people will talk to you, whether or not you get flustered, it's so much better than asking questions. So Thomas Wright asked a question about Freckle. If Sweep becomes the next Trello, I'm going to stop you right there. I have absolutely no intention that we're going to become the next Trello. It is a much smaller use case. It is a much narrower field, and that's fine because like most Trello customers didn't pay any money, and the fact that they got bought was sort of not based on something that they could control, if that makes sense. I also wouldn't want to work for an acquirer. That's me personally. There's no way I'm going to have another boss. So Sweep will always be a niche product compared to Trello, and that's fine. He asks, are you going to continue to keep Freckle alive or active? Or will people who use Freckle need to find an alternative? We have absolutely no intention to shut Freckle down. We're actively supporting it. We are working on answering people's questions, fixing bugs, and feature updates. We are just not going to work hard on marketing it because I would much rather work on marketing that works for the people in my 30 by 500 entrepreneurship audience. I just enjoy it more. So anyone who's using Freckle is not going to see even remotely degraded service. It's still going to get better. I'm just not going to keep trying to sell to enterprises because I'm just sick of it. So I hope that answers it. Diego asks, what do I think about Stripe's Atlas service? That's a service that lets you set up a Stripe account and a business in the US from outside the US, which otherwise is quite difficult. He says, I don't live in the US. I'm not a US citizen. I just want an easy way to get set up and charge users worldwide. Stripe Atlas is the thing that I have seen that is the best solution for your problem. I know people who work on it. Patrick McKinsey is a personal friend of mine as well as a business guru, and he's working now to further Stripe Atlas. We use Stripe with Freckle, and we're extremely happy. They actually provide really good support. Whenever we've had problems, they've taken good care of us. Stripe is one of the few businesses that we use in our business that I would wholeheartedly recommend with no reservations whatsoever. They don't pay me. I wish they would, but no, they're great. And business is complicated enough. If someone is like, I'm going to help you with this, all this legal crap, and they're like a trustworthy company like Stripe is, I would 100% use that today. We used to have to use a more traditional credit card processor, and it was awful. A+, I recommend Stripe. Damon also asks, does Sweep eventually replace Kanban or does it complement it? I see it as complementing it. Depending on how things go, my plan is to develop a small suite of applications that work together because there are other business use cases that I need and I want, and I'm going to develop whether or not they're businesses. So, but they're based on 30 by 500 processes such as research and backwards planning. The tools don't exist. I'm not doing them to make money. Sweep, I think, is a commercial product. I don't think backwards planning is a particularly commercial product. I don't think that we're going to build a traditional Trello type Kanban. Traditional. can you believe it's traditional now? But other people have their project management tools that they like, except for this one thing. When you're looking at start to finish work, there's lots of tools that work great for that. This is the main pain. This is the pain we're going to solve. We're not going to build a giant, big app that does everything. I hope that helps. I'm afraid I have no idea how to pronounce your name. Muti, maybe? Sorry. She asks, for picking a niche, do you recommend we design for our own pain? No. And here's why. Despite the fact that I just said, I'm going to build some stuff that I want to build, whether or not it's a product, I don't recommend if you want to build a product that makes money that you design for your own pain. It's very important to recognize that many people say, I built Scratch and Itch, and then it became a product somehow, magically, like, oh. But there are many people who build Scratch and Itch, or Scratch and Niche, Scratch and Itch products that never become successful because their pains are not other people's pains. So some people stumble upon other people's pains, big pains people pay for accidentally because they also have that pain, and they just happen to choose one that's commercial. But that means betting your success on luck. And I'm very much against that. If you research people and find that many people have the problems you have, and that they pay for things, and that they do all the other things we talked about good audiences doing, then in that case, go for it. Solve your own pain and theirs. You have insight into the pain because you're doing it. But it's very important to not just pick something fun that you want and do it if you want to make a product. If you just want to do it for fun and to learn and to solve your own problem, then by all means do it. But products, you want to look for a broad base of pain and commercial activity and learning and fixing things and working on improvements first. And for that, you should start with Sales Safari, as I demonstrated earlier. Thaddeus asks, Amy, you have 19,000 Twitter followers and you did tap into this audience. Where else did you promote Sweep? Nowhere yet, except for my mailing list. Twitter is actually extremely low impact. I started tweeting about Sweep on Twitter because it's easy and fun. Didn't get a whole lot of uptick there, maybe half of the people who signed up. And then I sent an email to my 30 by 500 audience, like you guys who wanted to learn how to build businesses or have businesses and want to grow them. And I emailed out about some insider stuff that I'm doing to do a soft launch. So that's like the insider view stuff again, but from a slightly different angle. And we got another 200 something signups from that. And I will be doing other stuff like this webinar. I'm posting videos of Sweep's evolution, but not really promoting it other than tweeting it. In the future, we will be writing productivity articles and like outsourcing articles. And like my friend Josh Kaufman gave a very useful talk about process manuals at my last conference. And I'm going to be reaching out to him because Sweep essentially can become a documented process manual by just printing out your cards. So like looking at ways to get in front of the developer audience, the designer audience, people who are building products that way. I'll probably go on podcasts and talk about it. But what's great about it is I can talk about the business stuff and the app stuff at the same time and still reach the right audience. And I can't do that with Freckle. I'm running out of voice here. I'm going to pick a couple more. Brian asks, how do you think these concepts apply to online courses? Any specific examples of really good or really bad launches of course authors you can think of? I'm going to take this moment to trash other people who make courses. Just kidding. I know you weren't asking that. So I have a great example for you, Brian. When I set out to create what became 30 by 500, at the first time I called it Year of Hustle, all of the design stuff that I did is exactly like I did for Sweep. So, and I invited Alex along at that time. We did this together. I found the need for people in the developer and designer audiences I was in who wanted to create products and didn't know what to do, didn't know how to sell stuff, didn't know how to create things that were commercial, or they had created products and they flopped because nobody freaking wanted them. which is something people do a lot, and they did a lot even more before. Now it's more common for people to create products. Back when I started this in 2010, it was actually really still very rare. So it's been a long time, been here a long time. Alex and I sat down and we turned my informal Safari. At the time, I hadn't formalized the step-by-step process, and we created a whole bunch of list of questions, just like I did for what Sweep will answer these questions. 30 by 500 would answer these questions. And we did card sorting, which is a technique I learned from my interface design career. We take the questions and we group them into logical things like that become lessons. And then I sat down and I wrote lessons that would answer those questions and then take people further than just answering them and get them to move. That was a 12-week email course. And that is where I departed from this process and made a big mistake. It was a huge amount of work. I nearly killed myself. I would never recommend doing a 12-week course to start. A lot of people, myself included, have made the mistake of sitting out and creating a much too big product. If I were to do it all over again today, I would start with webinars like this for free, and then I would do a 2-hour lesson thing with a little guide and sell that for like $100 to $200 rather than selling a big class for $2,000. So that's just examples from my life of good and bad stuff. The rules apply. The only things that don't apply are the code and interface design stuff. But if you think about it, a course isn't interface. It's just not a software interface. You want to make sure that the lessons set out to solve the problems, answer the questions the audience has. You want to make sure you use existing tools, make things, the actual production as easy as possible. I use Keynote for all my lessons because I'm good at it and it works. We use an off-the-shelf courseware rather than building our own. That was another mistake I did at one time. Bad idea. So focus on solving pain, identifying real pains people have in mass, people who are doing stuff to solve those pains, do a better job, answer questions, manage your scope, use existing products, and maybe do a big launch or maybe do a launch like I'm doing it. It's the same exact process. It is the 30 by 500 process in a nutshell, over and over again. It works for any type of value product. I'm at the point where I'm talking and losing track of what I'm saying. So I'm going to take one more question and then I'm going to call it a day. Let's see. Ron asks if we're developing a native iPhone app. No, not at this time. We're probably going to do a web-based one and keep it really simple. Keep it simple. Keep it lean. Ship it. That's our rule. There's no iPhone app at this time. It'll be soonish, but it won't be a native for sure. Too much work, not enough reward. Okay, real question. Ken asks, how are you planning out the videos where you preview the features? I'm posting them to my YouTube channel. As you can see, there are a bunch of them. How do you prioritize which features to talk about? Is it based on Safari, and which ones solve the biggest pains? You're gonna laugh. I just sit down and demo the app. These videos are, again, a microcosm of the process. I am not worrying so much about pains, although I do sprinkle in pains like stop shoving stuff in your calendar. Instead, this is better. I'm producing a lot of videos. The goal is more to reach people who are interested in product development than to sell Sweep at this time. When I do a real product selling video, I will work on the same format as I will for the sales letter, the PDF stuff I talked about. Check out the Charm sales letter for an idea of what that might be like. All right, I'll take one more. I lied. Nuno asks, do you defer the website for selling the product as well? So yes, actually, the sales page for Sweep is going to be very simple at first. And I know some people who sell ebooks and things who literally just sell it with a form that you click from their email newsletter that promotes the product to a credit card form from Infusionsoft that lets you just immediately do a checkout. And they don't even have a landing page for the product. I am bad at creating landing pages for some of our products like Just Fucking Ship. I've sold them from blog posts. It should really have a really great landing page. It doesn't. For the first year and a half, it was just a blog post, which is really bad. And yet I sold $30,000 worth of it. So there's a lot you can do wrong if you build up the audience and you understand their pains and you really hit them where they live and you get them to sign up for your newsletter. You can do a lot of things wrong and still do quite well buy yourself the time and momentum to do things right closer to the end, which is the whole point of shipping a product early. All right, guys, I'm so sleepy. I'm done. Sorry that I did not get to everyone's questions. Looks like a couple of these are really useful, and I will probably tackle them maybe in an email coming up soon, like especially Ollie's about competition. And if you are interested in taking 30 by 500, remember you can save $100 if you register soon. We are limiting it to 75 seats because we're going to start some live chats and things, and want to make it so that we can actually talk to everyone. Just let us know if you're interested in registering early. Not exactly a hard sales pitch. Say the word and we'll hook you up with a link. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for the excellent questions. And thank you for hanging out while I really blathered on about super nerdy stuff. I'm glad you enjoyed it, or at least didn't complain about it. I hope you all have a great evening or great whatever it is where you are. Talk to you soon. Bye. How do I end the broadcast? Here we go. There's the button. Real classy act here.